Okay, so what is Prometheus? Let me create a small diagram here. Okay, so far what we have done is CI and CD, right? CI and CD is what we have done. In CD, once you do the CD, that means you have done the deployment. Things are running and running on a cluster, and you have provisioned that cluster. And when I say cluster, I am not only necessarily saying it's Kubernetes cluster. It can be anything. It can be your simple virtual machines uh, and a server where you're deploying something, right? It can be anything. But that is not it. That is not the end of your responsibility, right? CI/CD is used for software deployment, automation, right? So you have done this part, fine. Then you have also done as a, I'm just talking about what is it which a DevOps engineer usually do. So one is this part where you facilitate your software developers so that they can deploy the changes fast and quick onto the production till production in a secure way with all the compliance and everything. Then you also have to have a good approach of infra automation, right? So if someone wants a server, they can just run something, or they ask you, or you run something, and the cluster is ready, right? So you use for infrastructure automation, you use tools like EKS, CTL, if you're using AWS, or you use simply Ansible or Terraform if you're using cloud, of course, right? So these are two, of course, these two are, of course, your responsibility, but there is one more thing, which is the monitoring, which comes later, or which is a continuous activity. The moment a software is deployed or infrastructure is deployed, you need to have a mechanism to collect the metrics. Now, what is metrics we talk about, but this is something called as monitoring. Monitoring and observability. They are used interchangeably. They are not exactly the same. They differ in definition. They more or less have overlapping definition, but they have some differences. What we'll talk about. We'll not go into detail, not to complicate things. But monitoring or observability, and you simply do one thing in here. The first step which you do here is collect the metrics. Metrics is nothing but information about your software which is running and your infrastructure or machines or nodes or whatever you wish to call it. So you collect the information and you apply rules to it, and you send alerts if something goes down. So this is basically is also something which you need to understand and learn and implement in your as a part of your learning, and eventually once you get a job perhaps in this space, this is something also which you guys will have to do, which is set up a monitoring platform so that if anything goes down in the production, you know immediately that something is not right. You have right dashboards. Dashboards is a single view where everything is there, and you can just by just seeing it, you would know, oh, hey, this cluster is not working, or hey, this cluster or this application is not working, or this application is taking high CPU, or this application is having high RAM consumption, or this specific endpoint is getting too many requests. And too many requests is usually can be a DoDS attack by the attackers, denial of service attack, right? So these things can easily be monitored and observed if you have a platform. So now you ask yourself at this moment, you have learned to deploy your things in the EKS CTL, that is on AWS cloud, right? But if you leave it open, I know we want to save money, so we end of the day we just close it, right? After we work on it. But let's assume it is running for whole day, for whole week, and you need to observe how your cluster is doing, how your node is doing, how your application is doing, and what is the CPU consumption, what is the RAM consumption. If you want to understand all that, you have no way to do it. You have to go there and maybe you search for something. Maybe AWS also provides you some sort of dashboards. It's not that AWS doesn't provide you, it does provide you. But imagine you have a set of clusters, 8, 10 clusters, different namespaces running thousands of APIs. And then you have multiple virtual machines running different kinds of JBoss applications or .NET application or this and that. And you want to manage all of that from a single place, right? That is where you need a centralized way of handling all these logs and matrices and etc. And then you have to configure some sort of rules and a way to visualize all of that. Okay. So far what I'm trying to explain you is कि हमें चाहिए क्यों? Why we need Prometheus? Why we need Grafana? Why do you have to feel this need of having it? This is what I am right now focusing on. That so far you understand this well, maybe not in full because आपने सारा implement नहीं किया है. Okay, it's fine, but still you have some clue about it, what these things are. But after you complete these two, this is the most important part. That is maintaining it or managing it or running it. Running a software is running a software and a machine is a more complex task. Creation is easy. Create ho gaya, easy ho gaya, right? Maintain is the problem. Surviving, making it survive is the problem, and that is where this part also is of utmost importance. Or isi field from the same concept comes the concept of SRE, site reliability engineering. Site reliability engineering heavily relies on these concepts. Okay, and the concept of site reliability engineering, we'll talk about it, not today, because that's a bit different stream, because it talks more about SLA and SLO and all those things, service level agreement, service level objectives, and there are certain framework which you have to understand and learn. So that is SRE. But SRE, the concept of SRE is actually more or less in layman terms, it's monitoring and observability. So they create very good monitoring observabilities and certain rules and a framework built around monitoring and observability. Okay, so this is the foundation of an SRE. Okay, any questions? Did you guys understand at least why we are learning this, why this is important? Okay. Now we go to the complex part, which is technical part, how we implement it, right? There are many ways of doing it. Using Docker and all, but I'll not show you Docker example. I'll show you some plain vanilla examples today. And I will also not use Kubernetes at all today because I want to keep this bit simple. Kubernetes part we'll try to understand tomorrow. So today and tomorrow, my objective is that I'll tell you how Prometheus and Grafana works, how it's installed, how to publish the matrices inside Prometheus, how the matrices look like, what you can do with those matrices, how can you generate the graphs from it, how you can really do small monitoring things using Prometheus and Grafana. So that is the focus for today. But all will be done on my local machine. And tomorrow we'll try to implement the Prometheus and Grafana thing on our actual AWS EKS cluster. So that is what I'm planning to do. But for today, let's keep things simple. Now, before I start Prometheus, I need to tell you some architecture of it. This is the Prometheus architecture diagram, which I've copied from the website or official website of Prometheus, which will go in a while. But it looks like this. It runs on a node because any server runs on a node. Node, in my case today, it will be my local machine. So मैं अपनी local machine पे install करूँगा, that will be my node. Then you have a server built on top of it, which has like 3 components. Well, there are many components inside, but assume there are 3 main components. One is time series database, some retrieval component, and some HTTP server. HTTP server is what is responsible for communicating with the world. So when you want to access Prometheus, or anyone wishes to access Prometheus, they will access it via HTTP server. Okay. Who is the consumer of Prometheus? It can be executed from, it can be observed from the browser. So request, आप browser पे जाओगे, HTTP Prometheus server का URL डालोगे, and you will get to see a UI, a web UI दिखेगा आपको. So that is how you can interact with Prometheus. And then there is different tool called as Grafana, which is nothing but a data visualization tool. So it's a tool which can directly get connected to Prometheus. You can configure Grafana to connect to Prometheus, and from there it will source the data, bring it in its own platform, and then you can create very nice charts and diagrams and dashboards from it. Okay, so this is the overall structure. Grafana, just forget about it at the moment. For now, Prometheus is what we are trying to understand. Now, Prometheus is, as a server, can source data from different places. अलग अलग जगह से वो सोर्स कर सकता है. इट कैन, वो क्यूबरनेट्स का क्लस्टर होगा तो वहां से वो निकाल लेगा. ओके, डेटा क्यूबरनेट्स क्लस्टर को पॉइंट कर सकते हो आप. You can point it to any other thing, right? So Prometheus targets. So anything from where you collect data is called as target. So Prometheus के लिए everything is a target. If you want to get a data of a node, किसी मशीन का डेटा लेना है, you will call it as a target. आपको Kubernetes का डेटा लेना है, you will call it as a target. आपको किसी API का डेटा लेना है, एप्लीकेशन का डेटा लेना है, you will call it as a target. Okay, and then there are also concept of push matrices, push metrics. Now, before I explain that, let me also give you this concept. Prometheus is a uses pull based mechanism. That means it pulls data. Okay, वो data को pull करता है. अब वो pull कहाँ से करेगा? Pull करने के लिए what is important is कि जो जिस भी target से मुझे pull करना है, वो data provide कर रहा हो in some format. So, for example, ऐसा देखो, imagine you have this is your Prometheus server. Okay, now Prometheus server, as I said, will pull the data. It will try to pull the data, right? What are the things from where it can pull? It can pull from your node. It can pull from your Kubernetes cluster. It can pull data from your application, or it can pull from anywhere else. It doesn't matter. It can pull data from anywhere else, but it cannot pull if it cannot pull it. ऐसा मुझे नहीं बनाना चाहिए. I need to create like this. So it will pull it. But it can only pull अगर वहां से कुछ pull करने के लिए है. If there is nothing to pull from these specific areas, then it cannot do anything. Correct? So what I'm trying to explain here is Prometheus cannot do magic. Prometheus can only pull from the places where there is something to pull from. So if you are node here, let's say my machine is a node, right? Let's say Windows. If Windows is not exposing any endpoint, so here what matters is endpoint. Endpoint, or let's call it exporter. I make it bigger. Right, so इस type के exporters is what you need to have, or exporters, or let's just call them endpoints, or exporters, or metrics endpoints, which you need to have. And without these, Prometheus cannot mine any data. So Prometheus is, understand this as a miner. Miner matlab someone who is exploring something in the ground, and he needs to see something in the ground to pull it from. If he doesn't see that, then it will not be able to pull it. So the responsibility of the data also rests with the nodes or the end targets from where it is sourcing it. Right? ये पूरा 5 मिनट का जो मैंने आपको समझाया वो ये समझाने के लिए था, to make you understand that Prometheus cannot get the data if it doesn't have anything to pull from. So each entity, each target who wants to publish their data in the Prometheus has a responsibility to do something in the application, or do something within themselves so that they expose this data. So enabling and exposing the data, the responsibility of it is with the nodes and clusters and applications, and Prometheus will then just pull it in a specific frequency. Every 5 seconds, every 10 seconds, it will keep pulling it, and after it pulls it, it will store it for consumption by the different entities like Grafana or from Web UI. Okay, there can be chances that you didn't understand what I'm talking about, but now I will start showing you the actual examples. And when I show actual examples, maybe you will maybe it will start making sense to you. Okay, now let me start with the Prometheus example directly. So I go to Prometheus. First of all, you need to install it, right? You need to go here, Prometheus, and there are different versions available. How you do install it, there is a Helm deployment also. So when we do this on Kubernetes, we can run our Prometheus on a Kubernetes, or you can run your Prometheus on an EC2 instance. It's up to you where you want to run it. We try to run it on an actual Kubernetes cluster later, but for today, we'll see how you can do it on your local machine, because that is more important and more easy. So you don't get entangled in just installation of Prometheus. You want to learn Prometheus first, and later we figure out how you can install Prometheus on EC2 and how you can install Prometheus on a Kubernetes cluster. Today we'll try to install this on our local machine, which is very, very straightforward. You just install using, if you're using Windows, then you simply say Windows. If you're using Linux, you use this star. Else you simply say zip. Download the zip file. Once you do that, then it will look like this. So you install it, but then you have to, not in here. I have installed this in the documents, Prometheus. Yeah, here and the documents I have placed on this in the documents, and there you will find this Prometheus application, right? So once you install, you don't have to install it. Basically, you have to just unzip it, and then you will have something called as Prometheus application here. Okay. What you do later is you open your command prompt. Okay. And you run a command, which is this one. You just go there and you run prometheus.exe. I've already have it running. Okay. So maybe I'll just close this and I'll run it. So how I'm running this, prometheus.exe, and I'm giving a configuration file here. And now this configuration file is important. Configuration file by default, if I open the default configuration file, it looks like this, and it has some information. Let me go through this list first. So here it's saying global scrape underscore interval. Scraping means, as I told you, mining. किस frequency पे मुझे किस target से data mine करना है. So when I'm saying global scrape interval as 15 seconds, that means every 15 seconds it will try to scrape for the data from all the targets every 15 seconds. You can define it target wise as well, but there's a global setting that every 15 seconds it will try it. Evolution interval evaluates rules every 15 seconds. So there can be certain rules which you can use. We are not going to be using it today, but rules evaluation also, if you change a rule, and the rules can get re-evaluated after every 15 seconds. Then there's something on alerting. We're not going to be using alerting today, so I'll not talk about it. Rules, we're not talking about it. We'll come directly to scrape configs. In the scrape config, you have something called a job name. A job name is a collection of what you want to scrape, a target. And within that job name, you can have multiple instances also. But let's keep things simple. We'll say job name as Prometheus. And in the static configs, we are saying targets as localhost 1990. Now what we are doing here, अभी हमारे पास कुछ और है नहीं, एप्लीकेशन है नहीं और कुछ भी नहीं है, हमारे पास केवल Prometheus है जो हमने इंस्टॉल किया है, राइट? So Prometheus can track its own setup, right? So it is like Prometheus is scraping itself, right? A scrape configuration containing exactly one endpoint to scrape. Here it's Prometheus itself, right? So this is automatically generated. जब आप Prometheus को डाउनलोड करोगे तो आपको Prometheus की एक फाइल ऑटोमेटिकली मिलेगी, एंड वो अपने आप को स्क्रैप कर रही होगी, क्योंकि बाय डिफॉल्ट और कोई उसको तो इट्स नॉट अवेयर अबाउट एनी अदर सिस्टम, राइट? So it will scrape itself. And this is where is your starting point. It scrapes how? It scrapes from a target, which is this one. And if you remember, this is what I was trying to talk about, कि जो भी target को आप scrape करना चाहते हो, whatever you want to scrape, whatever you want to mine, you have to expose it some way. Okay. So in this case, it is trying to, can I make it like this? I'm trying to create an arrow so that it points to itself. Sorry, I don't know. Okay. Okay. So the first example which I'm showing you is it is trying to scrape itself. So apna hi existence ko it is trying to publish it back to itself, right? This is how you're doing it here. It doesn't make sense, of course. It actually does make sense because you also have to trust. Prometheus is also one of the software which you are running, right? So you also need to monitor Prometheus itself. So that's why it is a feature where you can scrape it, Prometheus itself. But it's not it. So I'll show you another. I'll show you another configuration file which I created, which also looks exactly the same, but it has some more fields. So scrape config, first job name is Prometheus. So every 5 seconds, it will scrape itself, and the target is localhost 9090. Why localhost 9090? Because Prometheus is available on 9090, which I think it will not be because I've closed it. But still, let me quickly open this. Yeah, it's not working because I've just ended it. Never mind. So I'll start it in a while, but before that, let me again show you. Okay, so Prometheus is scraping this target. Then I want to scrape one more thing, one more job. Let's call it Windows. Windows means मेरा खुद का machine. My own machine also has some matrices, right? Some metrics हैं उसके पास. Metrics क्या क्या है? CPU usage कितना है? RAM consumption कितना है? Internet से कितना bytes coming, how much bytes are coming and going, right? So there are many matrices which is also available in my system. The problem is I'm not exposing it, right? So right now my Windows automatically expose नहीं कर रहा है उस matrix को. It's not doing it automatically. So I have to do something so that it also exposes it. Okay. To do that, I need to download certain exporters. So if this is the reason I was actually trying to tell you here that the responsibility of continuous monitoring doesn't always or not is not only on Prometheus. It is also on the targets. So in my case, abhi Windows ka example le raha hu, which is Node. So my Prometheus wants to know, and I want that my Prometheus needs to know the state of my nodes. In the case of AWS, आपके पास बहुत सारे EC2 instances हैं, and you need a central place, let's say Prometheus, where you want to notice and monitor what's happening with your different nodes, right? So you have to make your nodes or you have to configure nodes in such a way so that they expose this information, and then Prometheus will go and target that specific URL from where they can calculate, from where they can fetch this information and save it in its own database, in its own time series database. Okay, but right now I don't have it, so what I'll do is I have to download exporters, right? This is called as Prometheus. I've downloaded. Now I have to download different exporters. So Prometheus की website पर ही कुछ exporters हैं. Black box exporters, console exporters. If your name doesn't make any sense, I will not go and do it. What I'm interested in, node exporter. Node exporter here means कि किस टाइप का मेरा सर्वर है और मुझे उसमें से उस डेटा को एक्सपोर्ट करना है. Okay. Right now, only 2 Linux based exporters I have here. For Windows exporter, you have to go to releases. You have to go here, and here you will find a link called as Windows exporter. You go to Windows exporter, and from there you can download it. Okay, so and here you will see how to run it, but let me installation release pages. You go here and then you export the latest one, which is this one, Windows exporter exe file. So you can use the MSI installer as well as exe. I actually used the exe one, and I installed it. Not installed it, I saved it here. So this also is downloaded as an application. And all you have to do is in the next tab, if I come here, let me close this. So if I go right now, if I go to localhost, if I come here and say localhost 9198, 9198, 9182, sorry, I have nothing. But the moment I run this exporter, which is this one, window exporter exe, then it will give me, it will start a server and it will start exposing. You see, now it has come. So localhost 9182 is my Windows metrics. Now, what is a metrics? Because this also I'm supposed to talk about what is a metrics, right? So metrics are numerical measurements. Okay. Example of a metrics. Number of requests coming in, CPU, RAM. So let's see from here. Let's call CPU. So ये मेरा जो Windows machine है, it is exposing these metrics. Windows CPU core state seconds total. Okay, Windows CPU idle break events total. Processors, right? Memory. There should be something on the memory also. Memory, yes. कि मेरा मशीन कितना मेमोरी बाइट्स कंज्यूम कर रहा है, फ्री मेमोरी कितनी है, प्रोसेस वर्चुअल मेमोरी बाइट्स, प्रोसेस रेसिडेंट मेमोरी बाइट्स. Then do I have something on internet और different services? कौन कौन सर्विसेज मेरे सिस्टम पे अभी चल रही हैं? And this is live data. Okay, it's not static. You change it. Something is changing. You keep refreshing it. You will get new data here. OS virtual memory free कितनी है? How much memory is free right now? Right? How much is the total memory? How many users are there? If they're changing, then it will keep track of it. And this is called as time series data. Time series data means if this is a matrix, for example, the matrix is memory, right? अभी मैं जितने application चला रहा हूँ, let's say it's consuming let's say 10 GB memory, RAM is being consumed. Right now at this moment 10 GB. I wait for 5 seconds, maybe I open another application, now 11 GB. Then I open another application, started running some Java code or whatever, maybe 15 GB at that time. So this is called as time series data. Time series data means a specific metrics. There's a specific metric which is virtual memory, and this specific metrics is being changed with time. The value of this is actually changing with time. Okay, so this is how Prometheus stores the information. So Prometheus हर 5 सेकंड में जाएगा, information निकालेगा वहां से, and it will keep it with itself, where you can then create a diagram or graph for that specific matrix, and then it will show you for this matrix, this is the trend. It's going up, and then after 5 seconds, it was going down, and then going up again, and going up again, and then if it reaches the maximum, you have to configure that an alert will be shot down. Alert will be sent to the respective teams. Your machine CPU and RAM is up by this much. Okay, so you can continuously monitor what's really happening in your cluster using these matrices, and these matrices are exposed by the target themselves. Agar target is not exposing anything, then Prometheus cannot do and cannot know anything about that specific state of that application. Okay, so this is what matrices are. Prometheus nahi define karta hai is matrices ko. These matrices are defined by the target themselves. So in the case of Windows, this is how you define. Windows ne define kiya these matrices about itself. Okay, of course using an exporter, right? So we downloaded exporter, and exporter ne sare matrices collect kiye, and the exporter has exposed it in this URL. Okay, and that is what I have defined here as well. If you go here, I'm saying job name as Windows, scrape for after every 5 seconds, and the target is localhost 8182. आगे का जो मैट्रिक्स है वो अपने आप लगा लेता है अगर कोई डिफाइन नहीं है तो. Okay, automatically it will target this and download it in its Prometheus database, time series database. Okay, then I have configured another one, which is my actual application. So you see in the actual diagram we had node, we had cluster, and we have application. So you can track anything from it. एक example, एक configuration मैंने Prometheus is doing itself. Second example which I have here, there is node. It's calculating it from a node, and for node I have to install exporter. Exporter किया तो उसने publish शुरू कर दिया, and then I'm skipping Kubernetes thing which we will do tomorrow, but I am now talking about application. In the application, I have named it as appointment API, and I am giving a specific path here, which is specific to my application. Okay, so if there is a specific to my application, then I have to mention it under the metrics path. And then I'm saying again scrape interval 5 seconds, and then I'm saying the target as localhost 8081. Okay, this is where my application will be running. And I'm repeating the same thing again. The responsibility of exposing the metrics is always with the application, which means I have to do something in my application so that my application exposes the metrics. Okay. In the case of Java, because I'm using Java, I had to do something. This part as a DevOps engineer, you guys don't have to do. Okay. But I'm telling you still because so that you know that developer has to do something in their application. This is called as instrumentation. Instrumentation is a concept which a developer has to put in their code, and only then certain certain metrics can be exposed at a specific endpoint, and then Prometheus can go and hit that endpoint and get the data and then store it in its database. Okay, how I am doing this? I'm using sort of 3 libraries here. One is Spring Boot Actuator. Second is Micrometer Registry Prometheus. And there is one more, which is AOP. Okay, you don't have to really worry about these things. I'm just telling you for the sake of telling you so that you know that how developer instruments his own API. And assume in this case, I am the developer who is actually doing it. So I've added these 3 libraries. And then what I've done is, and as a developer, what I'm interested in, right? As a developer, I'm interested in that I need to know at runtime how my different methods are performing. So basically 2 things. One is if someone calls a get or someone calls a post, get mapping appointment here. If someone calls the get mapping, I need to know how much time it took, right? So I have instrumented it using an annotation called as at time. And I have given the metrics name as appointment API get time. I also want to know if someone does a post, then how much time it took for that person to receive the request or receive the response. That is, I am again calling it as appointment API post time. Okay, and I'm using the timed annotation here. This is one metrics. One metrics is about the time of get. One metrics is about the time taken by the post. Then I have 2 more metrics which I want to expose as a part of my application, which is how many times my get method is called and how many times my post method is called. For that, I have also added one more instrumentation service, and I'm calling as record get request and record post request. If I go to instrumentation service, this is a plain vanilla service, and I'm just incrementing it. Every time a get request is called, I'm saying increment by 1. Every time post request is called, I'm saying increment by 1. Okay, don't get confused. This is something which you don't do. You guys don't have to do. You guys can just use my application, which is this one, and use it. But the idea is, if I go and run it, if I go and run Java now, so my application is running. Let it run. Okay, failed to start. Already in use. Okay, because it's already running, is it? Okay, I think it's already running. Yes, it's running. Let me stop it. Okay, it's stuck. I'll just kill it. Kill. Okay, I'll run it again. Not like this. Run Java. Okay, running now. I open this. This is my endpoint. If I go to Swagger UI index.html, this is my API. I can just go and give it a try, execute. Okay, my application is running. Okay, but where is it exposing the metrics, right? This is all my Swagger and this and that, but my application has to expose a metrics which Prometheus can mine. It has to expose a URL. It is exposing, my application is exposing after whatever I've done. मैंने बहुत सारा अभी जो किया, right? What I was showing you, actuator, this and that. After doing all that, my application is exposing that information in this URL called as actuator Prometheus. What it is exposing? It is exposing many things automatically. It's exposing the Java virtual machine threads, peak, Java memory used, this and that, a lot of things about my application. But at the same time, it's also exposing which I explicitly wanted, right? So I wanted what? I wanted two things. I wanted my appointment API post and get time. That means I wanted ki mera application, how much time it is taking for that request to complete. And then I'm also wanted to track how many times this get request was called and how many times this post request was called. So I have one endpoint like this, sorry, one metrics which is called like this, appointment API get time. And I have one more which looks like appointment API get requests. I should have put something like counter here, but fine. Okay, and I should also be able to see those two pointers here. Appointment. Do I see? Yeah, you see. So appointment get request total 1. Right? Now let's track this. So if I go back here again. No, not here. Sorry. I have to go back to my Swagger. Okay, I have executed it, see, multiple times. I'm executing 5-6 times I've executed. Now if I come here and refresh this and find that matrice, I've lost it. Anyway, it was just 1 earlier. If I just do an appointment. Okay, now here, you see, it is the value of this is now 8. So the point I'm trying to make here is every time you hit this URL or refresh this, it will give you a latest update about that endpoint. Okay, अभी मैं जाके यहाँ फिर से execute कर देता हूँ, execute, and I will refresh this. It has become 12. मतलब 12 बार ये run हो चुकी है. Okay, this is what we call as time series data. So Prometheus जो entity है, Prometheus as a software is a time. It is to manage the metrics which is time series. That means एक वैल्यू है, एक नाम है, ओके, उसकी वैल्यू बार बार चेंज हो रही है. So either it's a count or it's a value which is going up and down, right? A gauge or a count. Count can always only increase. CPU, RAM, they can go up and down. So there are different kinds of data, but they are still time series. That is, with time it changes. Okay, and that is the basis of Prometheus. That is the basis of this whole monitoring thing, because आपको monitoring करना है कैसे है, with time. That each time something is happening, something is changing in your application. It can be a CPU, it can be a RAM, it can be a response time, it can be your data packets, it can be a request, response, whatever. But something is changing, and whatever it is, you call it as a metrics. Right? So in this case, मेरे पास API का get endpoint है, post endpoint है. I want to calculate two things. For my get, I want to calculate कितनी बार कॉल हुआ, और हर बार जब कॉल हुआ तो कितना टाइम लगा रिप्लाई में, right? So one information is here, appointment get API get request. This I configured in my API here, and then I had appointment controller, which is this one, appointment API get time. Okay, so this was request total, and then there will be one more, which is I think called as fine counter, and then the post request nahi hui to 0 hai, then this is the time. This is the time, right? So it is talking about abhi itna time laga. Okay, if I just copy this and paste it. Okay, so this is a gauge. A gauge means something which can go up and down, and there's another thing called as count, which can only increase. So number of requests is a count, which always increase, and gauge is something which can go up and down, right? So which is the response time can go up and down, up and down. Now this is 1.6799124. Okay, and if I run this again, what's happening? It has changed. It was quite fast, right? So पहले ये 1 point something था, अभी 0.24 seconds में पूरा हो गया, right? So this is how you can track what's happening with your application. You see, हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं अभी, मैं आपको क्या बता रहा हूँ. I'm trying to tell you how you can monitor an application and how you can monitor a node. Okay, now let's see how it looks like. So अब मैं जाता हूँ Prometheus पे. If I run this, nothing is running because मैंने Prometheus run नहीं किया है. All I ran was an exporter. Now I go back here and I will, okay, I was actually talking about this file. So this file here I have configured कि मुझे Prometheus का खुद का डेटा चाहिए, मुझे Windows का डेटा चाहिए. Windows डेटा कहाँ मिलेगा? Localhost 89182 पे मिलेगा. And I also want my application data, which is appointment API data, which is available on this 8081 localhost and on this path, right? This is what actually I was showing you, right? At this path. That is actually what I have configured in my Prometheus configuration. And once you have this, then you go back to your terminal and then you run the command prometheus.exe config file का path दे दिया मैंने यहाँ पे, and then I will just run it. Okay, so the moment I run this, it will start running and I have to go back here and just refresh. And this is what you see. So this is the Prometheus UI. Let me go back to this diagram. You see, so Prometheus server, मैं फिर से डायग्राम को बताता हूँ. Prometheus server मैंने इंस्टॉल किया, रन होने लगा. HTTP server है. HTTP server, to access Prometheus, you can access this HTTP server, and then you see this, this UI. Okay. Then Prometheus has pulled the metrics from targets. Okay, and हमारे पास 3 targets हैं. We have 3 targets. Target number 1 Prometheus itself, target number 2 Windows, target number 3 appointments API. And I have told Prometheus कि आपको डेटा कहाँ से मिलेगा. Prometheus का डेटा खुद से ही मिलेगा, right? तो localhost 9090 ही किया है मैंने. If you see, it's also 9090. So it is mining itself. Windows का डेटा मिलेगा localhost 9182 से. Windows for the data of Windows, you will get it from Windows localhost 9182. How? Because I have also executed one more command, right? This command I executed. This one. I downloaded the Windows exporter and running it. So it is kind of exposing Windows. This exporter has fetched the information from Windows. Windows के machine से fetch किया, and now it is publishing it on this endpoint 9182. So I'm telling Prometheus, hey Prometheus, please find the Windows related or node related data directly from this endpoint. Job name, same thing. जो मैंने बताया, mine it here, but at this endpoint. Okay, so सारे targets, all these targets are exposing data like this, which you can actually manually go and see. This is what I was showing you. So Prometheus, एक एक करके देखते हैं. Localhost. This is my first target 9090/metrics. This is Prometheus ka data. So Prometheus is hitting this endpoint after every 5 seconds and reading all this. Okay? Then my Windows is exposing data on 9198, which is this one. No, sorry, not 9198, 9192. Okay, so it is exposing Windows exposing data on 9192 matrix here. So pura data यहाँ पे आ रहा है. And I am repeating again and again, this is not a static data. Every second it's changing. I have educated my Prometheus server to mine this every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds हर एक चीज, हर एक matrix की value change होती जाएगी. Okay. And then I am also saying mine it on 8081 and get this on actuator Prometheus. And this is where my application is exposing its data. क्या हो गया इसको? Let me see, is it running? Yes, it's running. Okay, so now my data is also here, which is what I was telling you before. I'll come back to my platform, which is Prometheus UI. Okay, so now all the data from my 3 targets is now into Prometheus. Now I can go and hit the HTTP server and see that data there. Now let's see how. I'm here, Prometheus. अभी कुछ नहीं दिख रहा है यहाँ पर. Fine. I can search for metrics. So जो भी data अभी तक collect हुआ है, metrics, I can actually search it from here. By the way, I can go to status. First search, start with the targets. I go to status, search for targets. There are 3 targets. Appointments API, Prometheus, and Windows. If I go and check the labels, these are the labels which tells you more about that data. Okay, so these are labels for that specific targets. Okay, now if I click on these links, they will take me to the same page which I talked about. Like ये data कहाँ से आ रहा है, ये data कहाँ से आ रहा है, और ये data कहाँ से आ रहा है. All this thing we will get it from there. I go here and then I go back to show you how I can see the information. So remember I was showing you this part. ये मैंने अपने कोड में डाला है. Appointments API get time seconds, appointment API get time seconds max, count, and the total. Now if I click on the total and click on execute, it will tell me there are 13 requests like this. Okay, and I can then visualize it with my graph. So I go to graph and it will tell me this is what is happening at the moment. At the moment, in the last 1 hour, this is the graph for it. Okay, now let's try to do something. I will first go here and see the scrape time as for the appointments API as, let's say, just 1 second. So it will try to mine this after every 2 seconds. Let's just say 2 seconds. Maybe it could be a bit slow, maybe 3. So I don't want this to get stuck. So it's 3 seconds. And then I will try to relaunch my Prometheus. Oh, this is Windows one, sorry. I have to stop this and run it again. Okay, and then what I'll do is I will try to hit it multiple times. For that, I have a small script, which is curl in loop. So what I'll do is I will do cd doctor appointments cdz shell, and I'll run. And here I have nothing. I have just curl in loop simply hits the appointment API again and again so that I don't have to do it manually, right? And then it does it in loop. So I am simply saying bash curl in loop. Okay, so it will just run it for 100 times after every single second. Okay, now let's see what's happening. So if I go back to my dashboard, I'll execute, and you see immediately you will see a shot up in the number of count, and it's continuously increasing. And if I reduce the sequence, I'll change this. So now it's saying there was some calls and now it is increasing. And I've asked it to do it every 13 sec or every 3 seconds. And you see number of incidents, number of calls is actually increasing. Okay, I can try with some different thing. Now I can also try with appointments. Get requests total. Okay, this was actually total, right? Total. Now I'll say with the time taken, right? Time taken can be different. So this is, you see, this is the counter and this is a gauge. GAUG is a gauge. Gauge can go up and down. Usually CPU usage, RAM usage can go up and down, right? And counter is something which always increases, right? Now my get time, API get time seconds max is a gauge, and I will try to execute this. Okay, and I will see the graph of it. That is also consistently increasing. And if I change this to, let's say, 5 minutes, this is what is happening. Okay, execute again. Right now it's taking 0.6, something between 0.6, 0.5, different calls. It's giving you different values. Okay, here, let's see what's happening. It is also changing, graph is changing. Okay, because it's increasing, numbers increasing. So what I'm telling you here is you can then visualize what's happening with your cluster, or what's happening with your Metri, what's happening with your application. I can then try something with the Windows, right? So I'll go here, say Windows. Okay, maybe net packets. Okay, net packets sent, total net packets received, total. Okay, if I search this, execute, and okay, if I go do this, let's take this example. So I will rather just quickly copy this, paste it here, execute. Okay, then I'll go in the graph. So okay, now this is telling you आपके विंडोज पे, ये विंडोज है आपका, इस विंडोज पर क्या बाइट्स ट्रांजैक्शंस हो रहे हैं, how many bytes it's actually receiving. Okay, if I execute, nothing significant at the moment. Now, how about I start downloading something? So I'll go to IntelliJ here and then say I want to download this. Okay, and it will start downloading something, right? So I will start downloading it. Now downloading is happening. Okay, I go back quickly. Okay, and then immediately you will see something happening here. You see a bump up. There's a bump. Okay, and it will increase because now you see it's increased. It's increasing. Okay, and this is how you analyze. This is how you see what's happening in your system. Okay, and you can track the CPUs. You can track the RAM. So I can go and add another panel here, Windows, and say CPU state, seconds total, or frequency, or utility. I don't know which one I should use here so that I could explain something. Execute. And it is telling you about all the core. So different core has a different metrics basically. Okay. And if you see here, out of this CPU, which is this one, अभी मैं for example complex calculation शुरू कर दूंगा. So then things will start, start with a different set of data. Okay, so previously when I started it was at this, and now since I'm running so many things, I'm running a Zoom call, I'm running this and that, and because of all that, things have been increasing. But you guys as a monitoring people, as a people who are into the DevOps space, you guys have to set some rules, and you need to have a visualization. What is happening with your EC2 machines? What is happening with your clusters? What is happening with your application? From a single centralized location, you should be able to see what's happening. And if something is not happening in right ways, let's say आपका CPU usage बढ़ता जा रहा है, application बढ़ता जाएगा तो क्या होगा? Application crash हो जाएगी, right? So before it gets crashed, you need to say, जब CPU usage 80% हो जाए, RAM usage becomes 80%, immediately send an alert. And the moment your team gets an alert, you will just do some mitigation things. Maybe कोई attack हो रहा है, maybe application memory leakage है, maybe you have to add some more machines in the node pool, right? So all that decision can only be taken once you get this kind of alerts, and this can only come when you are continuously monitoring your resources. Okay, so I've explained many things, guys, today. I know this could be confusing in the beginning, but I hope you guys get the gist of what I'm trying to do here, why I'm doing this, that part, and the gist of it, and how you can actually monitor your nodes and application, why you are doing this and how you're doing this. If you were to do this on your local machine, And that is actually my objective for today. I just wanted you guys to be familiar and be aware about the why part and the simple how part. I'm not sure if I succeeded in that. Uh, I'll decide based on what you're asking. Any questions, anyone? Any doubt? Oh, so in Grafana, you can see all this. All the data which you're seeing right now is coming from Prometheus, and you can see the memory profiles and different kinds of dashboards you can see. If something going wrong, it will start showing you in red, and then you can know, hey, something is not working. Let's do some mitigation thing, and then it can also send you alerts and emails and chats and whatever. Okay, but this part we'll try to understand tomorrow. But so far, any doubt in the Prometheus part? Forget about the Grafana, but in the Prometheus part, any questions?
No, sir.
Okay.